We ask that. There is a place for it, but the question is it being put down? Is it being depressed? Is our faith under fire? Is our faith being questioned? That's what we asked a couple weeks ago. Then we talked about Daniel and his taking a stand for faith. Today I want to talk about faith when my castle crumbles. How many of you live in a castle? Many. But faith when things go majorly wrong. We're going to look at Job chapter 1 and Job chapter 2. So if you want to get your Bible open to that point at some point, we'll be reading those scriptures. But first of all, here's what Charles Spurgeon had to say. If our faith is worth anything, it will stand the test. Guilt, that is something that resembles gold, not guilt as in a feeling, but guilt is afraid of fire, but gold is not. A paste gem, which is a gem made of glass, dreads to be touched by the diamond, but the true jewel fears no test. It is a poor faith which can only trust God when the friends are true and the body full of health and the business profitable. But it is true faith which holds by the Lord's faithfulness when friends are gone, when the body is sick, when the spirit is depressed, and the light of our Father's countenance is hidden. Faith which can say, in the direst trouble, though he slay me, I will trust in him, as Job said in Job chapter 13, verse 15. That faith is a faith born in heaven. Years ago, J. Hudson Taylor, does that name sound familiar to you? Missionary to Africa. He was talking to a young man who was about to start to work in Africa, or in India. Excuse me, China. He was about to start to work in China. And he said, look at this, son. And he pounded his fist on the table, and they were drinking tea, and the tea spilled all over the table. As he gazed at the startled young man, he said this, when you begin your work, you will be knocked about by numerous ways. Trials will come like many blows. Remember, those blows will only bring out what is within you. So that brings us to the question. How do you respond when troubles crowd in upon you so heavily that you feel like you are going to crumble under the load? How do you respond? And none of us is immune from trials, for certain. Some of us may be experiencing in other ways, different ways. Some of us more difficult than others. But we want to ask the question, why? Why am I being so put under the pressure of the trials? Of all the men in the Bible that we talk about that have experienced trials, who's the one that comes to mind? Three-letter word, starts with a J, ends with an E, and then an O. Job. Job received exceptional difficulties, heavy blows. We know his story, we've heard it so many times, and we know that trouble came his way, but in spite of those troubles, he lived a righteous life before God. God told him that. God made that very clear. And Job found himself as an unsuspecting victim, I guess is the right word, of a malicious scheme of Satan, who himself was engaged in a battle with God himself. Satan's determination was to destroy the life of anyone who might put their faith in God, and in particular, his determination was to destroy the life of Job. But throughout the whole story of Job, you've read that story, I'm sure, of 42 chapters in the story of Job and all of the things that went on with his life. He could have asked the question, why? Why, God, are you putting me through all this? But when God looked at Job, he looked at Job as one who was strong enough in his faith to be able to withstand those trials. let's see what we can learn from him. What was it that enabled Job to endure during those trials? And that takes us to Job chapter 1 and verses 6 to 12. Now, if you read it, beginning with verse 6, let's start there. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where did you come from?" And so Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil?" Have you considered Job? The sons of God that came were I consider them to be ministering angels. And they came on this appointed day before God to give a report of what they had done on the earth and to seek out further instruction as to what they were to do. But Satan comes among them. Satan's main purpose in coming, his whole intent in coming, was to bring about accusation against those who feared God, bring an accusation before God against those who feared God. We just read that passage. And so it's interesting to note that God pointed to one single man. One particular man who he looked at as being upright, being blameless, and one who turns away from evil. And now Satan provides this plan to destroy the life and the testimony of Job. So look at what he said in verse 9. Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, and around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You've blessed him. You've blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land." And the Lord said to Satan, but now, stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is yours in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now, let us not forget that Satan is still roaming this world. He is the prince and power of the air, right? He roams this world, and what's his purpose? His purpose is to destroy the life and testimony of those who want to follow God. So we need to be careful. We need to be aware of his efforts in our domain. His purpose is to challenge your faith and to cause you to turn your back on God. Just listen carefully to 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him steadfast in faith, knowing that the same suffering and experience is experienced by your brotherhood in the world. Be sober, that is, be sound of mind. Be vigilant, that is to be watchful, because the devil is roaming around seeking to destroy you. Make it personal. The devil is around seeking to destroy those who put their faith and trust in God. And so Job is under attack. He's subjected to two tests. The first test we just read about in the first chapter. It's a test against his possessions, his family. It's a test that Satan accuses him of not being faithful, or that he would not be faithful in the event of that test. The second one is in chapter 2, where God is brought again before God, and he tests Job's person. Both times he's making accusations against Job, and both times he's making assaults against Job. the initial accusation we just read about, was that Job would remain faithful to God because God had been good to him. That's the only reason Job would remain faithful to God. He challenged Job's motivation for being faithful, for remaining faithful. Satan suggested that if God removed the protecting hedge around Job, that Job would curse God. And to Satan's way of thinking, Job only worshiped God for selfish reasons. Now that accusation was also one against the character of God. It suggested that the only way he could get people to worship him is to promise them wealth, to promise them prosperity. And perhaps that indictment that was against God was God's very reason for allowing Satan to attack Job. But surely God knew Job's heart. God knew how Job would respond. And probably a secondary thing to it was that God wanted to strengthen Job's faith. So take a look at verses 13 and following. This is the almost an incredible thing to believe and to see how the assault came against Job. God's allowed the test to come, and it results in the loss of everything. Look at that. Verse 13. We're going to read down about verse 22. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their brother's house. And a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding up beside them. And the Sabaeans raided them and took them away. Indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. That's the first time. This happened 4 times in the story. While he was still speaking, another one came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another one came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels, and took them away. Yes, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another came and said, your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in the older brother's house. And suddenly a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people. And they all died, are all dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the anxiety, the feelings of dread that went through him? When Job responded, probably in a way that God expected he would, but it's in a way that if that happened to you and me, how would I respond? If I had those kinds of messages coming to me, one right after another, one catastrophe after another, how would I respond? Well, if you look at verse 20, Job responded in a fairly typical fashion to how a person would respond to catastrophic events in his day. Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground and worshipped. Wow. To tear his robe would indicate turmoil and shock in his inner being. To shave his head would indicate that he had lost his personal glory. Kind of typical to the day and age in which he lived. To worship God in that kind of a circumstance. Can you imagine? I'm not sure what my response would be, but I would hope, based on what you tried to help us with this morning in our worship, was that if our faith is strong enough, we would go to God and worship. We would try to recognize what God was trying to do. Verse 20 says, let me read it again. Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and fell on the ground and worshiped God. And he said, verse 21, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this, he did not sin nor charge God with wrong. When Satan levels an attack against you, what's your typical response? Your response, I suggest, will be determined upon how you perceive that attack? First of all, was it an attack or was it a test from God? Was there something in my life that God is trying to teach me? And if I perceive it as a test from God for a specific purpose, then my only response is to go to God and to understand what He's trying to teach me and then learn from it. Does that make sense? The Apostle Paul, or James, admonishes us this way. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. In other words, that you may be grown up maturely, mentally, and morally. You may be mature in your thinking. And you may be complete in every part of your body, sound in mind and body, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given you. But let him ask in faith, not doubting, for he who doubts is like the wave of the sea, driven with the wind. But let no man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. James chapter 1, verses 2. Brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. It's pretty hard to do. But where was Job's focus? Job's focus was on God. God, why are you putting me through this? But God, I submit myself to you, for you to accomplish in my life what you need to accomplish. That's the hard part. That is the hard part. And throughout the ordeal, Job fully trusted in God's plan for himself and for his family. Well, chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. Satan's not quite through with this trial. His first assault has failed. So he's calling on stronger measures, and he returns back to God again. And God again affirms Job's character, his uprightness, and his love for God. And he's recognized that Job has remained faithful in spite of all the testing. Look what it says in verse 3. After Satan had come back and presented himself to God, God says, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil? Have you heard that before? God hasn't changed his mind towards Job. Job has remained faithful. He will still hold fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him. God says, Satan, you have incited me. You have caused me to become angry. Not Job, Satan. You've caused me, you've incited me to do something, not only to prove Job's faithfulness, but to prove my integrity. You've incited me to do that. Now, to destroy him without cause. So Satan answered the Lord and said, verse 4, skin for skin, yes, all that the man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan in verse 6, behold, he's in your hands, but spare his life. Don't kill him. God's really putting Job to the test. Satan is willing to acknowledge that his first attempt against Job has failed. Job has remained faithful. But he is now determined to destroy Job, and he's counting on the probability that if Job was seriously affected in his body, possibly to the point of death, that Job would curse God. Yeah. That brings us to another question. This is a question that we should each ask ourselves. What will it take for me to have enduring faith when my castle comes? How will I maintain my trust and confidence in God in order to allow Him to accomplish His will and purpose in my life? See, that's the problem. What is God wanting to accomplish in my life? Well, we find that Job stood firm. After that first assault, his immediate reaction was to worship God. The second assault came, and we find Job sitting on the pile of ashes. And the vision you get is that Job is now outside the city, in the city dump, if you will, sitting on a pile of ashes and taking whatever potsherds he could find and scratching away at the physical ailment that he had, whatever it was. Boils, the Bible says that God afflicted him with boils, or he was afflicted with boils. But here he is outside the city, and throughout his encounter with his friends, Job is constantly talking about the pain and suffering that he's gone through. How humiliating, think about it. Job is in Job chapter 29, we read that Job is a leader of the community. He sits at the city gates, which means he's part of the leadership. And now he's outside the city gates, sitting on a pile of rocks, sitting on a pile of ashes, scraping his wounds. Verse 7 says that Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head, and he took for himself potsherds from which he to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Pitiful scene. Then there's Job's wife. Job's wife comes along, and we read in verse 9 that, why don't you just curse God and die? Why do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. When Job needs a time of encouragement from his wife, what does he get? A message to just go ahead and curse God and get it over with. Look at Job's response. He said to her, You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. In other words, you're speaking as a woman who doesn't have the spiritual wisdom. You speak as a woman who is not discerning what's going on. You speak as a woman who, as a foolish woman speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? And in all this, Job did not say anything. In his calm confidence in God, he was confident in the ways of God, and he pointed out the troubles as well as the good come from God. We read through the rest of the book of Job, and we find out at one point, Job in 27, verse 5 and 6, Job said to his friends who were accusing him of having done something that displeased God. Far be it from me, he said, that I should say to you, you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. And in all that, Job did not sin. Rather, what Job did is he proved the words of God were right and just. Now, here's another question. What was it that enabled Job to hold on to his faith? What was it that enabled Job to hold on to his faith. I call it sustaining faith. Sustaining faith is this. It's a complete reliance on the sovereignty of God. The sovereignty of God is that God has the absolute right to do according to his own purpose and plan and for his own will to be accomplished. It's the total dependence, complete reliance on the sovereignty of God. Sustaining grace is the assurance that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Romans 5:28. Someone put it this way. Sustaining faith is what takes you through those dark nights of the soul when you don't know where to go or what to do, and it seems that you can't last any longer. But because of your ceaseless faith in God, you do. You continue. Sustaining faith is that confidence that no test or temptation that comes to you is beyond the realm of what you can face. You know what 1 Corinthians chapter 10:13 says. Basically that. No temptations taken you but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not let you be tempted beyond what you are able, but will provide a way of escape that you may be able to. Sustaining faith is grounded in the infinite wisdom of God, whose complete knowledge of what is needed in your life makes it possible for him to test your faith in order to prove its depth. Sustaining faith trusts in the power of God and brings you through the test and takes you to a new level of faith. So what about those trials that come? What about those testings that come? It's those times when we need to learn to trust in God. We need to learn to put our full confidence in God. Like Proverbs 3:5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will not. He will direct you. When that verse says trust in the Lord, what it's really saying is put your confidence in the Lord. Have faith in that what you're going through, and the trials and the temptations that you're going through, that he is there with you. And you need sustaining faith to see you through. So I say the things that we go through, those tests that we go through are the tests that are used to build this sustaining faith. So when we go through a trial, when we go through the hard times, kind of like when the steel was put through the fire, what did it do? It hardened. When our faith is put through the fire, it hardens our resolve to become all that God wants us to be. And so that's why James says, count it all joy. Peter says the same thing. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to the praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom, having not seen, you love. Though now you do not see him, yet believing you receive with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your soul. What is the end of my faith? When is my faith complete?
You're dead.
When I meet him in heaven. When I take it to be with him. Because he is the author and the finisher of my faith. He is the one who put my faith into motion. He is the one who successfully completed everything that was necessary for my faith to be complete. Well, we read in chapter 42 that God restored to Job twice of whatever he had before. And he lived on for another 140 years. And can you imagine after 140 years he's looking back and scratching his head and saying, what happened 140 years ago? God has so blessed me now. Do you know when that blessing came to Job? It says after he prayed for his friends. After he prayed for his friends. Those friends weren't really good to him at that point. And I'm imagining that Job, when he prayed for his friends, he's praying, God, help them see, open their eyes. Not to my goodness, but to yours. Open their eyes so they can see. Forgive me for my attitude towards them. Forgive them for their attitude towards me. I don't know what he prayed, but he prayed for his friends. And then God blessed him abundantly. You know, troubles are going to come, trials are going to come, if we haven't had them already. And when they do, it's important for us to determine how we will respond. You know, there's going to be people who say, do you really trust God? Do you really think God cares? Do you really think it was God who put you through this? That's kind of like the friends, you know. I didn't do this to you. It's because you did something wrong. Do you really think it was God who put you through this test? Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and take charge of the situation and overcome the difficulties. What's our response? The alternative is to take our burdens to the Lord. I love what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, 30. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest to your soul. And my yoke is easy, and my burden is come. Lay your burden at my feet. Let me carry the yoke with you. Let me share the burden. Let me show you I love you and I care for you. Let me be your help in times of trouble. The psalmist puts it this way. Psalm 23, verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. The valley of the shadow of death is translated differently as the valley of dark shadows. When I walk through the valley of dark shadows, who's there with me? Take your bulletin for a minute, and you have that insert. This is probably a very familiar poem on the back of that insert. You know that story about the footprints in the sand? This is kind of what we're talking about. One night I dreamed a dream, and as I walked along the beach with my Lord, across the dark sky flashed the scenes of my life. For each scene I noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one belonging to the Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand, and I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest time, the most troublesome times in my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why. When I needed you most, I don't understand why when I needed you most, you would leave me. He whispered, my precious child, I love you, I will never leave you. Never ever during your trials and testings, when you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. God carried Job a long way. And there's trials and testings that come along in our lives. And God carries us. But it's contingent, I think, upon the strength and endurance of our faith. When my castle crumbles, how strong and enduring is my faith. Father, what a message from Job. We learn of your undying confidence in us, your faithfulness to us as your precious beings. We learn of your faithfulness. We learn of a man whose integrity was beyond question, whose righteous behavior before men was evident. And when you put him to the test, he was able to stand firm. And it goes back to our integrity, our confidence in you, our trust in you, so that when the trials and tests come in our lives, we too can stand firm. And there are times in our lives, there's trouble coming throughout in our world today that is going to test our faith. Help us all to stand strong and true faith to you in all that we do and say, that we might bring honor to you. Pray in Jesus' name.
Are you washed in the blood, church? I got one person. I said, are you washed in the blood?
Yes, sir.
That's better. 376. 376, if you turn your hymnals. 376, verses 1 through 3. And to Jesus for the cleansing power. Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood? Cleansing blood of the Lamb. Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you walking daily to the Savior's side? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Do you rest each moment crucified? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed? Yes, I am. Cleansing blood of the Lamb. Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? When the bridegroom cometh, the robes be white. Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Will your soul be ready for the mansion bride? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Yes, I am in the blood. Cleansing blood of the Lamb. Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? One more time. Are you washed? Yeah, in the blood. Cleansing blood of the Lamb. Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Amen. No.
All right, just quickly before we go, I want to read to you again some words that we read earlier. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints. There is no one who knows who fears him. Amen.
You are dismissed to fellowship time.
How do you get them to work on your roads and they work on ours?
What?
How do you get them to work on your roads?
Oh, the county? Jim Olson has some pull somehow. I don't know. I went out and like, I asked him, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we're adding a bunch of material. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And he was like, well, Jim Olson's bitched at us.
It looks like they're getting ready to blacktop again, do another segment.
Oh, you mean on Colcord itself?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant in Colcord Estate.
Oh, no.
No, they came in and put a bunch of material down
Did
on
they?
on our roads.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't maintain these roads. And they were like, Jim Olson complained a bunch. So.
Did the Forest Service pretty well pull out of your area, too?
Mostly, oh yeah, a long time ago.
Did they?
Yeah, the county does Colcord twice a year, sometimes 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, Chamberlain Trail.
The county tried to take it over from the creek on this way. And Forest says it's too expensive, they're going to do it. They don't do anything. It took me 50 minutes to go the 8 miles today.
Oh, really?
You know, the people camping all over. And
Oh, yeah, I know. I think I mentioned to you that I had to watch a friend of mine's house. He went on vacation, and well, he did a few times. But anyway, one time was for 2 weeks. And I had to walk his dogs and take care of his plants and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was down there twice a day, up and down Chamberlain Trail, there and back,
Oh, yeah?
there and back. And
Wow.
yeah, I know. I'm very aware of that. And someone ran off of it, I don't know, about a month ago. They went off a cliff. It was on the news.
Yeah. Just
Is that over by Fisherman's Point where they went off?
no, it's beyond Fisherman's Point. It's not. Do you know where the ranch turnoff is, the Gillette Ranch?
Yeah.
It's just on this side. What? 1/8 of a mile.
Oh.
Something like that.
And you're in Hagler itself, right? You're in Hagler Creek itself.
Yeah.
Right?
I live right on the creek.
We lost a dog. Geez, it was about 10 years ago. Our dog took off. And she was a white boxer. And her tongue would hang out like a boxer's does and everything.
Yeah.
And we had flyers everywhere and everything. And then finally, some girls called from down in Hagler and they were, we have your dog. And it was like, oh, where'd you find her? Oh, she was running down Colcord and her tongue was hanging out. She was dying of thirst and everything else. I was like, she was heading home. She runs free out here. She knows her home. And her tongue hangs out because she's a boxer. They were like, oh, we thought she was dying of thirst or this and that. And it was this, I don't know, some lesbian monks. It was, you go into Hagler almost until you're out of it, and then you take a right.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a compound or something back in there?
Yeah, there's some Buddhist monks back there that bought it. And
well, they call themselves lesbian monks. Whatever.
I'm not really into them.
No, me either. I was like, I don't care, I want my dog back.
Yeah.
They got a bunch of kennels, so they must harbor
Yeah,
dogs.
they picked up from some of the hurricanes went through. They picked up
Yep.
animals.
Yeah.
And had them out there.
I'm gonna give you this.
Put the cup down again.
Hi, Bob.
Hey.
How are you doing, sir?
Community
Doing okay.
got bigger.
What?
Community got bigger cups now.
Yeah, we're gonna really do it.
How about you?
I'm fine.
You better stay up here. It's too hot.
It was cooler here this morning when we got here than it was when we left home.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Up here, we probably about 7:38 at night, we open all our windows and then close them
Yeah.
5 or 6 in the morning. I haven't turned my air conditioning on yet.
We haven't turned that off.
Well, you got the money.
Sure. No, not really, but anyway. We didn't decide to retire because we didn't do it.
Oh, is that?
We just spent 6 months up at the church on
Is that one up north you were going? Up on the Grand
by the, yeah. 6 months. 6 months or 2 weeks.
that good experience?
Oh, it's pretty. The area is actually really beautiful. It's Mojave Desert, so it's quite different. Similarly different from the Sonoran Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fairly good-sized community. 1,000 people there on a full day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess are they close enough to Vegas?
Well, they're a couple hours from Vegas, an hour from Kingman.
Oh,
We
okay.
accept that fact.
Years.
There's beautiful trees.
Yeah, they probably shot in Kingman.
Yeah, you're about an hour